Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Kita tunggu sebentar Pak Himlal ya, Bapak Ibu sekalian. Oh, sudah masuk. Ya. Pak Arif.
Iya Bapak.
Bisa kita mulai kah?
Boleh Bapak, monggo silakan.
Baik. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat malam Bapak Ibu sekalian. Hari ini kita akan Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, of course. Yes, very well. Yes, nice. Oke. Hari ini kita akan mendengarkan kuliah dari Pak Himlal. Dr. Himlal, please I will introduce you in Indonesian and then I give the lecture for you. Is that okay? Oh, namanya belum keluar lagi nih. Baik, sambil menunggu beliau connect lagi, jadi saya akan memperkenalkan Pak Himlal. Beliau adalah peneliti di CIFOR dan sekaligus juga beliau adalah peneliti juga di Melbourne University. Jadi hari ini kita mendapat waktu yang sangat tepat untuk mendengarkan kuliah beliau, dan beliau juga adalah peneliti di CIFOR ya, di CIFOR. S1 di Nepal, kemudian S2 ada di Nepal dan juga di Melbourne, jadi dua titel master, dan PhD di Melbourne University di bidang Forest and Ecosystem Sciences. Saya kira ini waktu yang sangat tepat. Nanti beliau akan menyampaikan kuliahnya berkaitan dengan environmental payment services ya, payment services dan spatial modeling. Saya kira ini bahan yang baik sekali untuk kita jadikan referensi manakala kita akan mengkaji riset-riset kita. Saya cek dulu apakah beliau sudah connect.
Mic-nya bermasalah kayaknya. Itu
oh iya benar.
Ya.
benar. Kita tunggu sebentar ya. Mudah-mudahan tidak ada ini. Jadi rencana kuliah hari ini 1 jam akan digunakan oleh Pak Himlal untuk menyampaikan kuliahnya. Setelah itu ada question and answer. Kira-kira 1 jam ya, jadi mohon nanti Bapak Ibu bisa menyampaikan pertanyaan baik dalam bahasa Indonesia ataupun dalam bahasa Inggris ya, bisa disampaikan langsung ke beliau atau nanti juga bisa melalui moderator. Saya diminta oleh panitia untuk menjadi moderator malam ini ya. Mudah-mudahan tidak hujan deras. Biasanya kalau hujan deras di rumah saya ini langsung mati ya. Saya tinggal di Dharma, jadi kadang problem dengan hujan. Baik, kita tunggu sebentar beliau. Ini sebagian besar di master ya? Atau ada yang juga di PhD?
Ada yang dari S3, ada yang dari S2, Pak, Prof.
Oh, baik. Semuanya di semester berapa nih?
Kalau yang S3 ini semester 2, Prof.
Oh, 2. Berarti sudah mulai proposal ya. Semester proposal. Baik, sebentar, kita belum dapat confirm dari beliau. Himlal, are you hear me? Sebentar. Beliau tinggal di Bali, walaupun peneliti CIFOR, tapi karena pendidikan putra putrinya sehingga beliau menetap di Bali untuk karena di sana ada international school yang katanya bagus.
Dan karena work from Bali ya Pak, ya Prof ya?
Iya, ini di sana sudah jam 8 malam.
Bukan karena himbauannya Pak Sandi Uno ya untuk work from Bali ya?
Pengennya juga kami mengusulkan itu, Pak.
Work from Dramaga, Prof.
Dramaga.
Dramaga elok, Dramaga cantik.
Iya, Taman Darmaga. Sebentar, dia belum bisa connect aja. Dia sedang restart nampaknya. Arif belum masuk dia, Arif ya?
Nampaknya belum juga, Pak Lilik.
Belum ya? Kita tunggu sebentar ya. Kemudian bahan-bahan yang akan disampaikan hari ini akan dikirimkan setelah beliau memberikan kuliah hari ini. Ya.
Yeah, good afternoon, Pak Lilik.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's nice
Can you hear me
to
now?
hear you. Yes, please. We are planning to have 1 hour for your course, and then after that we will have a question and answers. Yeah, I think
that's perfect.
Okay, I think you can directly. Time is yours, please.
Yeah. Okay. Let me share the screen. Yeah. Good afternoon. Thank you, Professor Lilik, for your kind invitation for me to provide an opportunity to share my experience about ecosystem services and spatial modeling. So the title I just changed to Spatial Modeling of Ecosystem Services. So yeah, this talk is a part of the lecture series, so which I think colleagues you have already heard talk from Dr. Helmi. So this is a second of the series, and so I will cover very briefly about ecosystem services, definition and concept of ecosystem services, characteristics and classification of ecosystem services, basically spatial nature of ecosystem services, as your interest here is more on modeling of ecosystem services, And I will touch very briefly about the tools for spatial assessment of ecosystem services. A variety of models and tools. And I will also give an example of ecosystem services modeling. Very recently, we have done in Vietnam, Nepal, and also Indonesia. So that will give you a variety of experience of using different tools. I will probably not have time to go on detail of these all models, but I will and tools, but I will share this handout and also the papers related to this work for you as a reference. So depending on your experience on ecosystem services, I forgot to tell you that today is World Environment Day. So happy World Environment Day to you all. So ecosystem services are the benefits, direct or indirect benefits we receive from the ecosystems. That can be any, like natural ecosystem, man-made ecosystem, modified ecosystem, agro ecosystems, production ecosystems can be like ocean ecosystems. So these different goods and services. As you can see here, there are 4 broad category of ecosystem services. Provisioning services, like we got a food or materials that we receive. Regulating services are that we regulate our climate regulation or habitat regulations, those kind of services. And cultural services, that ecotourism, nature, beauty, those sort of services, and also the supporting services that supports the functioning of other ecosystem goods and services. So this graphics is a little bit old, like the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment 2005, but it's very, very relevant still now. So, ecosystem services and human well-being are very well connected each other. So ecosystems provides a vital goods and services to human beings, and they are linked, as you can see. The strength of the arrow, like thicker the arrow shows the so more direct strength, and then the darkness shows the intensity of the linkage. So human well-being and long-term economic success depend on ecosystem services, the benefit that we got from ecosystem. So provision of ecosystem services not factor into important decision that affect the ecosystem. So at the moment, we usually count that the direct, like provisioning services such as timber, food or fuel, those kind of services we count, but regulating services are not very much counted in our decision making. That is the challenge, like, so that's why distortion in decision making and damage of provision of ecosystems making human society and ecosystem environment poor, because we don't count those services. Slowly carbon are now counted, but it's still very early stage. Biodiversity, water, those services are not always valued in the planning and decision making. So this is a simple graphic, but very powerful. As you can see, the relationship between the development and ecosystem, like nature. Let me adjust my screen a little bit. Yeah, okay. So the relationship, like ecosystem services sustain the development of human well-being, and development of human or development also impact the ecosystem services. So that's yeah, that a little bit one-sided, like nature of the human and ecosystem. So I will now briefly talk about the character of ecosystem services. So marketed, these are like either marketed or non-marketed. For example, the timber or food, what we produce from ecosystem, that has a direct market value. But other services such as biodiversity or scenic beauty or other habitat regulation, those services are not directly marketed. So we cannot sell. There are some provision when someone enters into the park, we can charge the entry fee, but that's not the real value of the park. So for example, if you go to Bogor Botanical Garden, Kebun Raya, you pay X amount. So I don't know, maybe 10,000 rupiah you pay, but that's not the real value of the botanical garden we provides to human. So that's just some like basic fee that introduced by the local municipality. Heterogeneous nature across the landscape and change through time. So ecosystem services are always dynamic, so it changes over the time, and also their distributions are heterogeneous. As you can see in the graphic here, that's from Brazil. Planted forest and natural forest are integrated each other. As you can see in the middle, there is a natural forest, and there is a nice managed plantation. So these are different. So they both landscape provide different set of services. So other interesting nature is multiple goods and services can be produced on the same area. So from same patch of land, you get a carbon, you get a biodiversity, so water regulation and those services. But when we clear cut the forest, we will lose the services. For example, if we produce for timber, if we harvest the forest for timber production, then we will lose the other services. But sustainable management of forest, like logging, what we call selective logging, or like harvesting in one part and another part retained for nature conservation, that also provides multiple services. And also depends on the beneficiary who talks about. So some peoples are very much interested about carbon and biodiversity, and others are interested about water regulation services. Then similarly, some other peoples are interested in water. So who is talking about ecosystem services? That heavily depends on what kind of services they are looking for. So this is our topics is more on spatial modeling of ecosystem services. So I guess this is a really important slide. So how ecosystem services can be classified based on the spatial nature. Let me check how I'm going on this time. Okay, yeah. So spatial nature. So some of the ecosystem services are global importance. For example, climate regulation. So that's why there's globally there is important about reducing emission and climate. So this is because the atmosphere is connected. So if we protect the forest in Indonesia, that is benefit for people living in Thailand or Australia. But some other ecosystem services are locally important. For example, storm regulation. For example, people in Java, Central Java, if they have a coastal protection using mangrove, if mangrove forest is well maintained and that protect the coastal like storm regulation, that is benefit for local people. Not that benefit will not be realized people from elsewhere. But again, the carbon sequestered from the mangrove is global importance. But the storm regulation benefits from the forest is local importance. We can discuss this more later. So another important aspect is directional flow. For example, water regulation and nutrient regulation is flow from direction. So for example, water flow from the mountains to lower altitude, and then whatever, like if the people live in mountain, if they protect their forest or the ecosystem benefits are realized, the people live in downstream. They don't need to do anything, because if the people who lives in uphill, in mountains, they protect or manage the resources, that will benefit. For example, good example is Bogor. Like, you know, Bogor, if we manage the forest in the mountains, Mount Salak or around, that benefits realized by the people in Jakarta. So that's called like directional flow. Another is point of use, where the service is produced and used. For example, formation of soil and raw material, where it is produced and where it is utilized. So user movement related, flow of people, unique natural feature. For example, some other services, for example, genetic resources or recreational potential is, if we have for example, it's a beautiful, like recreational benefits from Bogor Botanical Garden can be realized by people who live in Bali or Sumatra. They can visit and they can enjoy the benefits from that. So it depends on people who visit from where, or even the tourists coming from overseas, they can also enjoy the benefits from those ecosystem services. These are quite important when we talk about spatial modeling of ecosystem services. Now I will briefly talk about the tools. So there are a variety of tools and models that help us to spatially quantify and map or value the ecosystem services. Here I am just highlighting a few of them. So very commonly used tools, as you can see in the slides of these tools and description of tools. So these tools are pretty much free, like which is, so yeah, these are your open source. You can just download from the internet. You need GIS background. Of course, we are talking about spatial modeling, and then you can use this depending on your knowledge on spatial modeling, the services you want to model, and the landscape, and also you have the time, you have your data and availability. You can choose different services, which I'll come in a minute. So I use in our work, in example which I'm explaining, we use mostly Invest tool, and another is ecosystem TESA, also solves. So this, yeah, depending on your choice. So let me briefly talk about a few of these services, in case if you want to model ecosystem services as a part of your master's thesis or your PhD project. TESA is Toolkit for Ecosystem Services Site-Based Assessment. This is pretty kind of relatively simple, but it's a free, as you have a PDF guide. It's a minimum expertise required, a moderate time, but you need to collect data from the field. It's not very much spatial, but some level of spatial. Of course, ecosystem services are based on the space, but you don't need to have much GIS background for this. We can also quantify monetary value, site value, and you can model variety of ecosystem services: global climate regulation, harvested wild goods services, water, nature-based recreation. This can be done using TESA. I will also share you some of the examples of TESA based ecosystem model. That's after the talk. So to Pak Lilik, and you can share this. Another very widely used, I must say, very widely used. This is tested and used in many parts of the world, called Invest, Integrated Valuation of Ecosystem Services and Trade-off. So that's a pretty sophisticated, depending on your knowledge and experience and your requirement. It has 3 tiers. It has a basic level of modeling, so you can have a very coarse data, basic data, and limited information you can also use. But as you have more and more data, you can do more like advanced modeling, like tier 2 and tier 3. The other most important thing is you can build the scenario here. So you can develop your scenario based on certain criteria. Then you can model the ecosystem services. What if, like if we do business as usual, what will be the ecosystem services value or quantity, and if we do the conservation scenario or development scenario, and you can change these ecosystem services. It requires GIS time, moderate time required, require a lot of data, mostly related to land use, land cover, spatial maps, quantitative. It can be non-monetary or monetary. So it can be multiple scale, local to national, and also scenarios. In terms of ecosystem services, as you can see, you can model many services: carbon, blue carbon, coastal vulnerability, fisheries, habitat quality, you name it. So as you can see in the list, so scenic beauty, recreation, these all services can be mapped and modeled using InVest. Okay, the other tool is called ARIS. So I think I need to go a little bit quickly because I'm trying to touch 3 cases from 3 countries. So ARIS is also open source. Currently, it's also very little training, very little knowledge, and you can is web based. So you can look further, and you can also assess a variety of ecosystem services using ARIS. I'm moving a little bit closely. The another is social value of ecosystem services, which is called SOLVS, but it also works with spatially. So you can put your social data or people's perception or that kind of information using spatially. So so as you can see, the cultural and historical value, cultural heritage value, inspiration of creative and social relation, those kind of things you can map and present in a spatial way. So the next is I am going to touch you 3 examples. One from Indonesia, so West and Central Kalimantan, about oil palm development and ecosystem services. We did a couple of years ago. That's a very advanced model and tool we used, InVest. The other is spatial assessment of ecosystem services from central planted forest in central Vietnam. That we did very recently. Using my postdoc from University of Melbourne and several other colleagues. So we planted ecosystem services. And another is I'm giving to give you a different perspective from Nepal about participatory assessment. So, but also that's also you can also map this, not only the participatory, but also what we call public participation, GIS, and also modeling. Okay. This is not. So Nepal case is more about participatory assessment and mapping of ecosystem services in data poor region. So for example, when you are doing so I don't know how many of you are participating here, but depending on your location and choice, you may have lack of data. You may not get some data for variety of reason. Either the data doesn't exist, or it's very difficult to collect the data, or you need a lot of time. Sometimes you don't get the data that easily because people don't want to share the data, because data is power. So in that case also you can use this participatory modeling tool, so which need less data. So this example, I will run that very quickly. This is a Nepali case. That's these photos are 1970s or 1980s. So where due to increasing population pressure and loss of forest, a lot of challenge in the lowlands. You know, mountains are degraded, as you can see, that impact the people who live in downstream. Without knowing the ecosystem services, that concept wasn't there. So people realize that, okay, if we don't protect this forest without knowing any ecosystem services, so our livelihood, or we cannot live any longer. So then from the government and international institutions, support from like World Bank and many donor agencies, they started a community forestry program, so community-based management. So engage local community to protect and manage the forest resources with two objectives. One is regreening the bare hills and protect from landslide, and another is provide the basic forest product. That there was no concept of carbon, biodiversity, and these all regulating and cultural services, very basic services. After that, these mountains are actually been green. Unfortunately, I didn't put the slides here. So from 29%, so the forest cover increased to 44 up to 45% now. So the forest is increased. Oh, here is a two-color image, as you can see here, in 1990 of that landscape in 2013. So yeah, forest cover is increased rapidly, and that provided multiple ecosystem services. But at the moment is basically people know reduced landslide and flood, forest cover increase, clean water in downstream, biodiversity and ecosystem services are enhanced. The socio-cultural and institutional benefits, such as communities are empowered, increase the green jobs there. Local institutions are very well empowered. Support to rural livelihood, and cultural and education services are provided. So I'm just going very briefly about the land use change in basically two decades in Nepal, and how we identify and map those ecosystem services. This is actually not far from the Mount Everest. If you heard, the tallest mountain in the world. So that's a region that's bordering to Tibet and in China. So basically use some satellite images and also old and new photos, and discussed with government authorities, local communities, and various stakeholders. So these are all you know, combined in it's called participatory PGIS, participatory geographic information system, and then we produce some spatial map based on people's perceptions, how where they feel the goods and services are enhanced or stable or declining. Okay, so here, so this is so in the central image is as you can see, this is just a perception of people. So the above one, this called oral, like word graphics. The above is local people's priority. So local people, as you can see, their the bigger the font, higher the priority. So their priority is firewood. So now their priority, as you can see, biodiversity, also food production and timber. As you can see, carbon is smaller value for them. Pollination services are smaller, and some are really minor. But if you talk to the experts, so their number is, as you can see, the biodiversity and timber and carbon are very high priority for them. Food production is relatively low for them. So that's a kind of perception. So the other graphics shows yeah, different kind of ecosystem services. It's very I'm sorry, I'm not sure you can read this. So but as you can see, the change in various ecosystems, I think you need to look at the real paper which is talking about so which ecosystem services. but that's a 1990 and 2013. So based on the historical data and people's perception, we show how the ecosystem service change over time. I guess I have another example. Oh, okay, here it is. Okay, this is much easier to look. Okay, as you can see here in the graphics, the same location. Actually, these figures from the same landscape. So as you can see, with the pool of landslides, and then later it's completely covered and with the greenery. So based on that, we mapped spatially and modeled ecosystem services. Some of the services, for example. So unfortunately, food production services are decreased because the forest before land is degraded, but a lot of agricultural land. But much of the agricultural land is now converted to forest, providing other services. But food production is reduced. But pretty much all other ecosystem services are enhanced. So what we learn from this case here in Nepal is community-based forestry. So, community-based resource management provides multiple ecosystem goods and services to local, regional, and global community, while only local communities are involved in protection and management. When we protect this forest in mountain in Nepal, actually the benefits from India and Bangladesh, up all the way in Bangladesh, the people enjoy because the reduced flood, and other services. So ecosystem service assessment doesn't always require enough data tool and sophisticated model. So we can basically use people's perspective and values and map those services. In contrast to elsewhere, ecosystems are increasing. So usually if you look at the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment or other reporting tool globally, forests are decreasing. We are losing much of ecosystem services, but in this particular landscapes, ecosystem services are enhanced, and community-based approach provides effective means to restore the degraded land, which provide multitude of ecosystem services. So I will go to the next case about ecosystem services from plantation in Vietnam. You may have heard that Vietnam's recently is one of the country whose forest is increased over the recent years. I guess their forest cover is increased from less than 40 to now almost 50%. So I think they're doing really good, but not always participatory or community approach. That's more about business oriented commercial plantation. But again, not like Indonesia, that owned by large companies, but much of the forest is owned by smallholder farmers. So they have a 5 hectare, 10 hectare, 3 hectare, those kind of small forests, but they manage this short rotation plantation, and then we look what happened to the impact of ecosystem services. This is a relatively new paper. So just a very quick background. During the Vietnam War, which is known as Vietnam and American War, vast tract of land were disseminated by massive quantities of chemical deposits, and it also spread the forest. And many places the forest, nothing is even grown until now. Reforestation initiative began in 1980. So by 20,000, 2 million hectare of forest has been planted. Tree planting activity increased over the years and now has more than 4.2 million hectare of planted forest, equal to 26% of total forest area, 14 per million hectare. So that's it's a quite big plantation. Some 2/3 of Vietnam planted forest is managed by mostly acacia and eucalyptus, as I mentioned, they're commercial. So our work is in basically in central Vietnam. So we have 2 provinces, Quan Hy and Hue. So as you can see in the map. So we use again spatial assessment, especially using the silviculture and management of plantation how the plantation is managed, and how the land is changed over the time, and we quantified some of the ecosystem services using spatial approach. Okay, so the above figure is this one, shows that the change of land cover from 1990 to 2005 to 2015, and as you can see here, so I will share you the again paper. So 2005 and 15, so a lot of forest cover has been changed that impact multiple ecosystem services. As you can see, the freshwater regulation services is not quantified in megaliter, but we put a very high, medium, low, and very low. So that's the changes here. So carbon stock we put in the number here. So it's also enhanced from 2005 to 15. So medium stock forest has been increased substantially, as you can see in the figure, and habitat provision has been increased, and sediment retention services also enhanced. So this case provides us some of the very interesting lessons. Like result, what this result shows that in these two provinces, forest cover has substantially increased, mostly replacing non-forest areas, degraded land and grassland or agriculture land, and poor forest has been now very nice economic plantations, economically viable. The framework demonstrates capacity to assess effect of planted forest on wood flow, carbon, sediment retention, stream flow, different like services. Apart from wood supply, carbon more is increased. More research is required to translate biophysical indicator benefit the relevant indicator. So how these ecosystem services benefit to human welfare need to be assessed. At the moment, we know that people got a lot of provisioning services. These are managed very short rotation, 5 to 6 years. They cut down and send to local pulp mill or local furniture and produce like small wood furniture and sell to the market. So some of the, as you see, the rich forest has decreased over the past years, mostly through the degradation of poor quality natural forest. Okay, so basically assessment of ecosystem services due to planted forest needs consider landscape scale changes. We cannot only look at the small scale plantation, 2 hectare or 3 hectare. We need to look at the bigger picture, because the water regulation, biodiversity, these are rely on the larger patch of forest. So production of good can be done in a small area, but when you talk about water quality, biodiversity and habitat quality, we need to have a larger tract of forest. This is from your home country. So ecosystem services under future oil palm expansion scenario in West Kalimantan, but we also did for Central Kalimantan. So that's okay. So that's so I put actually both Kalimantan here. So as colleagues, you all know that expansion of oil palm is inevitable. So it's always happening here for a variety of reasons. So higher the yield. I'm not going to any other issues related to this, just a purely scientific and purely ecosystem service perspective. So low production cost and high profit margin, as you can, high dependence on global market. So it's also there. Contribution to national and local economic growth. And also smallholders are managing in many places, and domestic and foreign consumption is also increasing. These are many other reasons. So this still increasing. So what we did here is just mapped those expansion using 3 scenarios. One is business as usual. So what we are currently doing, it's continue go like that. So business as usual. So what happens to the area of palm oil in 2 provinces? Another is conservation. Is if we the government has this moratorium and this various regulation, sustainability framework. If those are implemented strictly, what happened to the numbers? And another is sustainable intensification, because we need these products for whatever reason, like for the population is increasing, demand is increasing, the biofuel demand is also increasing. So then we can probably not increase the area, but it's intensify this with a better breed, better management techniques. So without expanding the area, that can also be maximized. So in that case, the land area will not be increased, but the productivity may be increased. This is a very interesting paper published in Ecosystem Service Journal, so worth looking. So here are the numbers. Actually, I guess no point reading these numbers because we can't recall, but you feel free to read this. So basically what I am saying here is, if you go for business as usual, 2/3 of land will go for will be converted for palm oil in like 2030. I think it looks like in the number. It's also difficult for me to read here because of the font size. Okay, so you can see the number here in a different scenario. So let's focus on the ecosystem service. We use the INVEST model here. So using the INVEST model and tools and available data from Ministry of Environment and Forestry. So the scenario which we are talking here are future palm oil scenarios. As one is a business as usual scenario, which is let me read this. Is very small. Oil palm and timber plantation will increase as currently doing in the all concession area. This current concession will be cleared and converted for production. So growing demand for wood and biofuel will be also increased. So those are so you can set your rules, like so basically criteria. And we also look at the conservation scenario, no expansion on forest cover and on peatland, so completely based on the government moratorium. Expansion of is confined to non-forest area only. Complies with the forest moratorium and state like zero deforestation commitment. So these are the rules we put for conservation scenario. And sustainable scenario is more about oil palm expansion on potentially suitable land, so which is already mapped by WRI and many other institutions. Use of improved varieties and management techniques, so that you don't want to increase the area, but productivity will be increased. And we looked 5 ecosystem services here: timber production, water yield, palm oil production, habitat quality, and carbon sequestration. Those rates we quantified using INVEST model. So study area, as you see, central and west Kalimantan. So you see the changes of land cover here. Business as usual, we put, I think, 20-year horizon by 2035. So 2035, what happens to here? So as you can see how the landscape is changed under different scenario: business as usual, conservation scenario, and sustainable intensification scenario. And some of the key findings on these key ecosystem services is presented here in the graphics. I will just read a few. West Kalimantan has about 60% of the total carbon stock, 6.5 million tons of carbon. And under the business as usual scenario, about that 779 million tons of carbon and test. So we can see the numbers of decrease and what services are increased and what services can be increased and what services are decreased. You can assign this on our invest scenario generator, and then you can look at the services and benefits. I will go to a bit I think generic findings here, rather than the precise numbers which you can read in the paper. What we found is there is a potential that the business as usual is not the solution. So what is happening and then continuation of this is definitely not solution, as you know, and government is already imposing those regulations not to expand on high conservation value forest or high carbon areas and peatlands. Conservation scenario produce a variety of ecosystem services are increased, but the productivity of palm oil will reduce. So that's probably probably good for conservation purpose. But if we want to maintain your economic growth, then sustainable intensification aims not to expand the area much, but use the improved variety or improved management system. Then you can without increasing much area, but you can always increase the productivity. I think that's the solution we presented from this exercise from Indonesia. Okay, from these these three cases from Indonesia, Nepal, and Vietnam, and also from our experience, the trends of using remote sensing and GIS is increasing rapidly because of and modeling of ecosystem services increasing because of the data availability, affordability, user friendliness, and then also available software and tools. So in 20 years ago, like GIS and mapping used to be kind of a bit difficult, but now it's very user friendly, and then you can even find a lot of data free. You can open source data. So example presented here demonstrate potential of use of remote sensing GIS to assess the mapping in various types using those models and tools. You can map ecosystem services at landscape scale. So there is still uncertainty involved while using remote sensing data for quantifying mapping. So some levels like, you cannot go to minute or fine level. So, but that can be complemented by the participant local communities. You can ask, validate. You need to validate your data in consultation with community groups and also ecosystem services. As I mentioned you earlier, that it is benefit dependent. Who is talking about? So local consulting local people is always a good idea to understand their perception and changes. Thank you. I will stop here, and yeah, any comments and any questions, feedback, please let me know, and open for discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Himlal, from your very comprehensive and very nice presentations. Ladies and gentlemen, Bapak Ibu sekalian, we already heard about the spatial model of environmental services as explained by Dr. Himlal. He already explained about the nature of environmental payment services and how to look the environmental payment services and how to model the environmental payment service. He also introduced some tools, how to use the tools for our studies. So it's very interesting to know. And you can also access the paper that will be shared after the talks. And I think it's you can read the detailed method, how to, for example, how to ask the community and then elaborate in our maps. It is very interesting tools, just because somehow we have difficulties to access data in some certain areas or our research area. Okay, it's still 1 hour for discussions. I will divide into some terms. For the first, I invite 5 students. If you have any questions or suggestions regarding the presentation of Dr. Himlal, please raise your hand, or you can directly talk to moderator. Any questions?
Yeah. The other option is you can even type in chat box.
Yes.
So if you want to ask in Bahasa Indonesia, then Pak Lili can translate this in English. So yeah, we can also do that. But no problem.
Prof, saya boleh tanya, Prof?
Silakan Mbak Rusnia, Bu Rusniani Rizna.
Thank you for the chance. Dr. Himlal, the presentation is very fruitful for us. And my name is Rizna from Bogor Botanic Garden, but I'm not going to ask about the ecosystem service from the garden. Well, a little bit out of the topic, but it's still in natural-based solutions. What I've known that in ecosystem services, there is an arising issue, right? It's called nature-based solution, or NBS. It's underlying the ecosystem services also. My question is, what do you think that Indonesia has already has one or a few success story, but the practicing of NBS, especially with spatial modeling, or is there any example of the potential NBS for to be successful in the future? And the second question is there any tools to assess the natural-based solutions? Yeah,
Thank you
the questions. Thank you, Pak Lili.
Okay, the second question, if any.
Saya mungkin Mbak Lili.
Silakan Pak Raka, please.
Yes. Thanks for the chance. I like to question to Mr. Himlal. I heard about your you're working on CIFOR and doing many projects in another country. So I want to talk about your experience of your works, Mr. I'm curious about another problem, other problem in another country. Maybe you can tell me more about the main problem or critical issues in another country about environmental issue. Because in my class, we mostly talk about local problem in Indonesia, but we don't know too much about another country. So I want to ask about any issue in another country about service and environmental service, and you can share what is good us to know like that.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that's my question. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Pak Raka. The third, Kuliah, if any.
Yeah, Paglilik, maybe we already got these 3 great questions. Maybe
Yeah.
rather than
Please. Yes.
collecting more
Please.
before I forget. Is that okay?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, Pak.
Yeah, and then we
Please.
can continue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank
Yeah.
you. All right. Thank you very much. Yeah, first, Ibu, I'm sorry I forgot your name, but yeah, thank you so much for very interesting questions. 2 questions. Okay, so yeah, so where is Indonesia? So yes, Indonesia is so I don't have to explain, you know, it's a vast 17,000 island. It's a huge vast country. So if someone talks about Indonesia is doing this, like, you know, in positive or negative, it doesn't represent, because it depends. It really depends where we are talking about. There's so many great things about Indonesia, so many success stories, you know, nature-based solutions, agroforestry, agro-silvoforestry, you know, restoring the degraded land that's happening many parts of Indonesia. As you know, I can give you several, like not 100, if not 100, 10, 20 examples, like where there are these good examples. I can share you the papers, but in the meantime, as you know, this vast country, demand for goods, services, and products, there are some challenging issues. Some parts, as you know, things can be done better way than currently being done. So there are not good, and some area there are really challenging, you know, things are happening. So it's really depends. These are the local specific issues, you know, rather than country scale. Yeah, so there's quite few good examples of enhancing ecosystem services. Even if you talk about your water quality, like you know, Bogor water conservation. So this is best examples, like you coming from nature based, from the water coming from the protected forest, and bottled it and supplied to all over the country. There are some successful payments for yeah, mostly water related. In Lombok, we have also good example of water services. We have a very excellent example in South Sumatra about paludiculture and you know, growing in wetland conditions and producing good ecosystem goods and services. In the same time, there are many other challenges elsewhere. So it's a very context specific. But what I, as a forester or conservation students of forester or conservation, or like researcher, what I want to talk to you, or like you, like everyone, is let's highlight these good practices and examples. So we need to disseminate, and then that will be replicated in many parts of Indonesia. I think that's yeah, it's not a precise answer, but something. Yeah. The other question about tools, yeah, there are many tools and methods. Not directly nature-based solutions. So depends. Nature-based solution is big, like, you know, from ecosystem services is nature-based solution. These are all terminals. So we talk about carbon farming. If you talk about restoration, is also nature-based solution. You know, using biomass energy is also nature-based solution. So it's basically so solutions that provided by nature. We use a sustainable way. So it's not like this. I think this most of the tools related to ecosystem services can probably use for nature-based solution, but I haven't seen much which tools, these tools and models for nature-based solution. I think I need to get your email, or Paglili share my email, and we need to talk about. We also work on nature-based solution here. Other colleagues are more expert than me. I'm more on restoration and ecosystem services, which is it's a part of NBS. Yep. That's the one. The other, yeah, colleagues, yeah, thank you. Your question is very interesting. So it can be a topic for whole, you know, a whole an hour lecture. But in short, there are good examples. Like for example, as I said, in Indonesia, you already know what are good and what bad. So apart from Indonesia, I work in several other countries like Timor-Leste, Laos, Vietnam, Myanmar, a little bit in Thailand. So this region. So it's very hard for me to summarize what are the environmental issues in every country, most of the countries. To give you the generic like good practices and issues, I can say you like forest cover has been increased like very much in Vietnam. So it's a good success example as a part of a smallholder commercial forestry. Forest cover has been increased very much in Nepal through community-based approach, community-based forestry approach. China is called biggest payment for environmental services. They call green for green. So greening the agricultural land, agricultural land for forest. That's called CCFP, conversion of cropland to forest program. That's a billions of world's largest PES system. So they spend even, I guess about $40 billion, if I'm not mistaken. So huge, like 30 million hectare of land is stored. So big success stories. Indonesia is slowly progressing good. You know, its forest conservation is realized and received the fund from NORAD. From Norway and others, so progressing in a good direction, but still a few things, things are need to be managed. Some of the things can be done better. In terms of other country issues like Timor-Leste, slash and burning is the biggest problem. So they go and cut and then shifting cultivation. So, but that practice can be also be in part of Indonesia that has been practiced. Myanmar has issue with forest degradation again. In Laos is still like forest, large area forest, still a low population, you know, 6 million people, a large forest, but still they have a problem with slash and burning and losing forest cover. So it's a mix, like some of the country they are doing better and than others. So again, the environmental problem is very much context specific and location specific. So we need to really talk about which country we are talking about and what are the key issues we look about. So that's to be in short. Thank you. So we can go for another round for 3-4 questions. Yeah.
Yes, there is one question in the chat.
Yeah. Okay.
From Hari Susanto, he asking about what is the most prospective research topic of ecosystem services in Indonesia.
Most
this open questions.
Yeah. That's also kind of Hari. This is more generic. What is the most prospective research on topic of it? Okay, so you want to mean what kind of ecosystem services basically a trade-off and synergy is must one of the perspectives, like how the ecosystem service interlink each other, or what if you increase one services, what happened to the another. That's probably interesting. But in terms of value from the government, now the government is very much interested in carbon. So I have seen very recently that want to go for emission trading system also in a few years time. So then carbon research or carbon farming or quantification, that is also very much important. Biodiversity and habitat quality is certainly another important topics. Water is certainly interested. So because very scarce, very important products, you know. So I think soil is foundation of our life. So soil related ecosystem service, soil itself produce a variety of services. So that's another important topics. Pollination is very important. Like I think less research done in Indonesia, not much, because a lot of our your crop like Indonesia is becoming very largest coffee producer. Coffee rely on like pollination. A lot of food production is rely on pollination. So which we are consuming, that we think this is a free gift by nature. So there's pollination services. But if these are wild bees and what their population go down, then you can imagine going to every tree and pollination. So people are even doing this in part of Australia, a part of China. There is like population of bee is going down, and hand pollination. So in California, in USA, so you can see how much cost this. I think that is also very important. I think pollination services. So yeah, so depends on your choice, and then also strong regulations. Your country is full of ocean and islands, 17,000 islands. I have read the story about the in part of central Java, like the villager need to leave their this house where they used to live for centuries, but now the wave is coming much harder and stronger in the night. So maybe having mangrove forest in the coastal land, and all, you know, the coastal services, ecosystem services is very much important. I think it's really depends. So I'm more than happy to discuss with you again. And first I will type my email address here, so colleagues who are interested to talk about me. So I definitely may not be work with all students, several students here. So we have several colleagues in CIFOR now. As you know, CIFOR and ICRAF merged, so we are together, CIFOR ICRAF. We have several scientists interested on ecosystem services, and I will put you with other researcher in touch, and we can support you based on which landscape you are talking about, rather than giving you a generic response.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Dr. Himlal, I have one question related to your example. While waiting the others' questions,
Yes,
it's
sure.
about the Vietnam. You mentioned that Vietnam already planted the acacia and eucalyptus, and we know that the acacia is invasive species.
Yeah.
So this is like in the other side is the environmental surfaces from habitat and carbon better,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
and then way around the armor cultures that might be have any bad impact on negative impact on the ecosystem. So
yeah.
do you have any cases how to deal with
I
such
already
kind?
got your point. So that's also my feeling when before I go to these places. Okay, 5-6-year-old acacia plantation in short rotation, and then you grow, and after that you cut it down and sell. So I think it's as I mentioned, you context specific what you compare with. So I think I developed a framework to assess ecosystem services from planted forest, which is popular. I will put a link here. So it's really depends on where it is and what it replaces. I know, like 20 years old, 20-year rotation mahogany, or 30 years old rotation pine, or other species is definitely better than 5 or 6-year-old rotation of acacia or pulp. To give you an idea. So native vegetation, the regrowth is definitely better than these things. So if you compare this with 1 year, 24 months in Indonesia, in large now, so it's many parts, we have Kaliandra and Glyceria, which is grown for 12 months or 24-month rotation, and cut it down and cheap. So the 6-year rotation is much better than this 1 or 2 year. So an annual crop, like you have chiles for every agricultural crop. So this much of these plantations are developed, as I mentioned you, is not in the ex-forest. So not the forest converted to these plantations. Maybe the forest, but the long time ago, maybe you understand. So the recent trend is the forests are converted on degraded land, ex-agriculture land, so that developed. So that's basically compare. So as I said, comparing with the agriculture, so that provides 5-6 year so habitat services, and then you don't go and impact the soil every year, so you go only 6 year in one time. So it's not, these are not comparable with the long rotation, multi-species plantation or mixed plantation, but better than that. And then also the other issue is that brings the peoples out of poverty. It's not great for ecosystem services itself, but more about provisioning services. As I mentioned you earlier, that we have 4 categories: provisioning, regulating, cultural, and supporting services. So this gives you much of the provisioning services here. So one ecosystem services rather than regulate some sort of regulating services also. So that's but that's not, these are not compared to Indonesia, these are not as massive, as I said, these are small order managed by 5 acres, 6 acre, 10 acre plantations. So these 6 hectare plantation is also they don't plant all in one go, so they plant like 2-3 years. So when the farmers harvest, he only harvest 2 hectare and sell this and make money for 2-3 years, and another 2 hectare sales after 2 years. It's a kind of ongoing process. So that will not clear cut the whole landscapes. It's not like what you see in Kalimantan or Sumatra when you go and see the large plantations, and when you clear the large tract. That's not like that. So it's comparatively better, smaller scale.
Yeah, thank you. There's already one question in the chat from
let me have a question. PSR implemented in different models. Based on your experience, other lessons on which model of more viable implemented Indonesia, New Zealand, in Borneo. That's a good. So payment for ecosystem services is becoming increasingly popular now. So different country, different models that's being practiced. So my work is more on, like as I mentioned, spatial model and tools, more about quantification, mapping, and valuation. So which is the foundation for PES. When you want to go and talk about PES, negotiate, you want to sell, or the seller need to know what he is selling, how much, what is the value of his goods and services, and the buyer need to know what he is buying for. So this is the negotiation. So PES is mostly voluntary, and there has to be one buyer, has to be one seller, but there may be government authorities in negotiation in some cases. So what I am in short, based on the lessons so far, a lot of success is about the hydrological services. That's very clear cut, because if you protect the forest, or the restore the land, the downstream water quality is improved, the water flow is improved. So but depending on the landscape, the water quantity may reduce, in short term, because the tree consumes water, they need water to grow. But when you have but this is not that straightforward, but it increases the percolates, and then you have a steady water flow in downstream. So but if it's not a problem like a country like Indonesia, because when you have a water raining, the rain comes so much, the tree consumes, that makes nothing, like, so it's still it's not reduced. But it's a problem in the dry continents such as Australia, or South Africa or Uruguay, these countries, you have a big problem of tree plantation. So when you plant, you don't have water in downstream. But for a country like Australia, like Indonesia, when you have this rain coming in one, when it comes, it rains a lot. So that shouldn't be an issue. So I think hydrological services or water is very much experienced and successful in many parts. The carbon will be slowly definitely going to be, in past it came from 99 CDM mechanism, but in between, so people think, oh, we can make a lot of money from carbon, and then they realize, oh, we can't make money from carbon, they left. But now slowly carbon price is going now, as you see, from $5 a ton earlier this year to now $20. I'm not even following what is the today's rate, but it's going to 20 euro plus minus. So it's going quite good. So with that rate, carbon is another interesting, habitat and biodiversity. We don't want to, we can't get what is the real value of those services, but people are willing to pay. So I think biodiversity services or habitat services is definitely important in Borneo. And again, as I mentioned, his contest, Borneo is itself is a huge. So which part of Borneo, which part of Kalimantan are you talking about? Central Kalimantan in Pulang Pisau, or are you talking about North Kalimantan in Barao? It depends on landscapes, because it's the payment has to be more localized. So I think you getting this carbon payment from Norway is also part of ecosystem services, but that's a more country specific. But in the particular, when we're talking about other ecosystem services, we need to talk about the landscape. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions? Yeah, well, we think from now. Oh, okay. Sostenes, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. I have a question concerning the applicability of these models, which have been explained, just mentioned. Actually, I am coming from the Savannah regions in East Africa, Tanzania. And my main concern is on the Mihombo woodlands. Ecoregions. We had the problem of modeling and quantification of Mihombo woodlands. My question is, within these models, such as these softwares such as Invest or Soivest, can we adopt these models and use them in regions like Mihombo woodlands? And my second question is, if there is any study that uses these models from CIFOR, please maybe you can share it so that we can learn on how do they being used on assessing Mihombo woodlands.
Thank you. Very interesting. I guess my colleagues, as you know, we have a office in Africa, and I got a very little experience in Ethiopia and South Africa itself, not the region what you are talking about. But I can put you in touch with colleagues who work in there, but you can easily go to CIFOR website and look at the region you are talking about. All our publications are open access, mostly, like I would say 90% are open access, so you can freely download. And in terms of applicability, I guess Savannah and this Invest and MIMES and Salt, that Salts I can't recall, but Invest is well tested in Africa, and Savannah ecosystem also. I've seen some example they did in Tanzania and some other countries. So I'm sure this Invest will definitely applicable in your region. Solves is applicable to any part of the world. So there is no issue, like you can look at those tools. There is when I send this to you, this file when I share. You can go to these tools and website and look. And we have also examples, these papers, these ecosystems. You can go to CIFOR website and look library and ecosystem service assessment, or you can just say models and tools for assessment. You will see plenty of examples of which assessment tools. Invest, you will get at least, even myself, I was involved in more than 10 invest models tools here, so you will have a lot of experience. We also have solves we did. So yeah, feel free to email me more about your landscapes and interest, and then I will put you in touch with our colleagues in Africa region, or we can also support from here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yeah. Himlal, I have one question. So,
yes, sure.
Regarding you mentioned that the directional flow of nature of environmental surfaces. This is yes, I always thinking about when the upland is eroded, then it goes to the sea, the coastal line, and they lead to grow mangrove, or sometimes it's used for farmer for doing practicing paddy field there. So I need your opinion. How we calculate such kind of surfaces, just because in the other side is negative impact.
But sure.
In the coastal line is bring carbons. So
correct. Yeah. No.
The scale how we evaluate the surfaces is a big problem.
Yeah.
So can you have any experience?
So yes, I have actually. This is very interesting. So if you are interested, I'm really interested to work with you on this topic. So as I mentioned you, the context specific or location specific, please note that, it's again happens. I was reading the article about Nepal the other day, and they said the government of this new government plan to sell the mining. They want to expand the mining so of construction materials, sand and other rock, etc., and even sell to India, and it's becoming very, very kind of controversial now. So everyone are against this. This is becoming a big thing there. So what happens here is about depending on like when you have so your catchment is protected there, and then when it comes nice in the lowland, you can see many parts of Indonesia. It's a nice forest there in downstream. Even in Bali you can see this paddy field, or you got a nice soil, very organic matter is coming, your agricultural productivity is increased. There's a good things there. In the same time, if you erode, like the peoples in upland, if they degrade these landscapes, so there will be, instead of coming the nice organic matters, it comes rocks and sands and etc., and they covers their landscapes and they cannot grow anything there. But eventually they may grow, like somewhere it may grow something else. So what can happen, and they will discard their agriculture. They can't grow anything, and slowly it may cover a forest there. It may grow forest. What you mentioned, like it can be mangrove can be grown and something. So it's a very this direction of the debate. It can be intended, and also that's called unintended consequences. So what you are doing is the downstream can be completely different. Sometimes it may result a positive, and sometimes it result negative benefits. So it's really depend on the location and the landscapes. The upstream. So when that's why people talk about the landscape approach, because if the people say, okay, this is my farm, I'm in dimension, I'm not taking care whatever does in upstream, that's their things. So if they are getting benefits from that, what the protection is happening there, and the person who protect their land in upstream is losing their agriculture or something, so we need to compensate them to one way or another way. So if we think about individual farm based approach, like one person, like, okay, downstream is my farm and then this is his farm. So if upstream guy, okay, this is my land, I would like to clear. So it doesn't matter what happened to down, and then it will be impact to the downstream. There comes the landscape approach, like we need to someone like the local council or local government or someone need to have we need a holistic management plan. Okay, so this kind of guy is providing those services to you here. So you need to compensate something, either through the tech, not directly if he doesn't pay directly, or some sort of taxation mechanism, or the it really depends on what we do, but we need to compensate. If we don't do that, the person may not provide these services forever. So it's a very interesting
Okay.
study.
Thank you, Pak Himlal. Okay, any other questions? It's very interesting topic.
While someone is thinking here, I can not a question, maybe but some interest here. What I am like I have I'm already full of like a project at the moment, but what I am always thinking about is this ex fish pond, shrimp pond, this coastal area. So the mangrove are converted to grow fish, or fish pond or shrimp pond, and after a few years, whatever reason, so I have done some research, and they are discarded 5 years, 6 years later. That's completely discarded and abandoned. It's nothing. Those land can be restored. So one thing is mapping where are these discarded fish pond or shrimp ponds that can be restored, and how to restore. So if someone is interested to work on this topic, some of the students, masters or PhD on discarded fish pond mapping or quantification, I can even type some of the questions here. So I would be very much interested to work on that. So maybe we can support that project financially or supervision from our side. So that's
interesting.
If anyone is interested on that. So I'm not I'm trying to sell, but that's a pretty much interest. So another very interesting thing is I thought very ecotourism, but about the healing, forest healing nature of forest. Now in Japan very long ago, but slowly in Korea, now China and Germany, so people are using forest as a healing. Like when they are sick, people they go to, so in Germany, people, when someone go to see the doctor, okay, doctor is not in his cabin, but he got a headache, so he's gone to forest for walking. If you got a headache, you got a pressure or something, people go to forest. In Korea, my colleagues, actually we have Korean scientists working with us, so they have a therapy. Even the doctor can recommend people to go to a week in forest or nature and stay there in resort and therapy, those kind of things. Japan is already practiced. I'm sure that they call what's the I forgot the terminology, but so that's forest healing or healing benefits of forest. So that's already proven. There is a scientifically proven that sending people in the forest, sending them same student to the city and looking their blood pressure and their all sort of things and mood. So it's much beneficial. So that's an aspect of forest. So another interest. So we have already research question and objective and everything. So someone can go and work on these topics, which I will share you if anybody interested on this degraded mangrove mapping, spatially map those area and see what can be done. So Global Green Growth Institute, GGI, is very much interested to support this kind of activity. CIFOR ICRAF is very much interested to support in some of the projects. Okay, so I will not kill your time for questions. So please go ahead if you have questions. But yeah, in the meantime, this is a potential area that we can work together.
Yeah, this is very great offer. Yeah, yes, just already there are topic and also fun, yeah, from the research.
Yes, something at least we can cover for students' research. Not a huge funding. We may be able to secure. Actually, I'm working on those kind of restoration as a part of the carbon farming, because when we have this carbon mangrove, it will be farm for carbon. So we have a lot of interest growing slowly, but we may have we can support even PhD project and students, but that's not already secured. But the small masters or small work for part of the PhD, we can support here. Yeah. So that's already there. Correct. Yeah. Forest based Japan. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's correct.
Yeah. Baral, I have one question again. I once visited Nepal, and I found that in the community forestry, it's what's related with the question from Risna. And I found that the species is very limited. Only two species that dominated the forest. So when I visit there, it is different for agroforestry that I have in mind. So in that case, as my question before, somehow it is benefit for sporting ecosystem, also the income of the people, but somehow is reducing in biodiversity level.
Exactly.
So
let me explain. I know I got a point here. I guess you went to one of the area where I was a district forester, that is Kabre. Can you remember? So Kabre or Sindhu is near from Kathmandu.
Yeah. This is near that place. Yeah.
Okay. So So actually, that's a plantation. We have a very limited number of species. Yeah, that's the reason.
Only sound or something, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So what happened is the landscape was super degraded when you plant there's not many species can survive on those extremely degraded land. So that's where I think you've seen Pinus roxburghi or Pinus wallichiana. Pinus was the mostly planted species. So why they plant is this is easy to survive. So even there's even very degraded land. So when you plant this pine, it grows. But now what happens? I don't know when was your visit, and slowly in many landscapes, what happened? First, very degraded. There was nothing. When you start planting some species, one species, and slowly protecting those areas, and slowly broaden, the birds comes, bats comes, and they bring the seeds from one source to another source, and slowly it's coming the broadleaf, other species. These forests are slowly becoming multi-species forests. Not everywhere, but many parts of Nepal. But in the mountain, you are right. So there is one species. So this is this is not great as compared to mix, multi-purpose mixed forest, but better than nothing. Like not having completely degraded mountains, so having one species is relatively better. But that's slowly understory is coming there.
This is the way how we reconstruct or reclaim the very degraded area.
When they started, it was very
species, and then followed by the other species. Okay. Okay. Any other questions?
Pak Lili.
Pak Wahyu, silakan.
Makasih Pak. Thank you Pak Lili, thank you Pak Himlal for the opportunities. I'm really glad to hear your lecture, very interesting. Even I'm a new comer at the RGs, learning the tools, but I think I have some question about your study. First, about your paper, back to your paper, you said that it's already stated that the conservation is the lowest expansion of the oil palm. So its impact to carbon storage is better. I think that's better than the other choice, and also the from in terms of habitat. But you suggest we should choose the sustainable intensification. I want to get more sense about your justification why we choose the sustainable intensification, because like we are at the forest moratorium mode now, so it's at the conservation way, right? But you suggest another, maybe it's balance between the ecosystem services and potential economic of oil palm, or how is it adjusted?
Yeah,
so that's the first one. May I continue?
Yes, why not?
Yes,
Yes, up to Pak Lilik. Yeah, moderator.
Okay, thank you,
silakan.
The second one is about the tools, Pak. I'm really glad to to see the visualization of the world. I mean, like we can imagine the scenarios in terms of the time, and we glad the clear. The map about the how to differentiate between the scenario. But I think the powerful that you use for the tools is not just my self justification. It's not at the RGS, but the other, that how you measure the ecosystem service. I think I want to get more sense about the how to combine the using the tools. I think it's because we are now at the lecture. Let's study about the tools. So the last one is about the. Your paper is very, very good, looking good at the on paper, right? But I think to implement it in the field is we have a caveat about it. Can you tell more about the caveat, about the consequences to implement your idea at the paper? Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Let me start the second question first about the tools. Actually, I didn't talk about any tool in detail. I just introduce you some of the very well known or well used, most commonly used tools and models. And the tools actually I used myself, for modeling. And when you Google ecosystem service tool, or if you look at the literature, these are the very common tools. That's why we listed, and I just provide one slide about each tool. So basically, if we want to do that, so the one tool about invest is training learning itself is 3 days like a training, that's the level of information needed. So I tried to talk about ecosystems, everything's in 1 hour to summarize, so that's the level of detail was missed here. But if you look at they all have a very good good manual. Invest has a very comprehensive support system and step-by-step manual. Even if you look at our paper, like this oil palm paper, which I already put you in the chat box, but I will share you. So then you will learn about how to use this tool, what it can be done about that. So that's not I can't do much this time. So because this is of the brevity, we lost a lot of details. So you need to look at the tools and its guideline, and basically other important thing is look at the paper which use that tool. So then you will learn more. But I will be more than happy to share resource materials like some of the good rather than you search, because I know I've been already working on this for last more than some 10 years plus. So I can put you some of the good tools and more about 15 years actually working ecosystem service mapping and modeling. So I can help you that. So let's stop there. That's there. So the other question was about okay, oil palm. Yeah, that's good. So I'm actually looking here because my PowerPoint is even very small for myself. So I know it's very difficult for you. So you definitely need to read the paper. So we have 3 papers about this. One is very large occasional paper, very detailed, what we did and why this scenario is there, what are the rules, and how did we define this scenario. Basically it was a very long process. So it's and any topics actually about any research in Indonesia we consult with Ministry of, I'm sure some colleagues here about Ministry of Forestry and Environment, some students maybe attached. So we work with them very, very closely. And then validate, and especially anything to do with palm oil, we work very, very closely with the central, with the provincial, with the local authorities, and to make sure we make no mistake. So what we did here is we first developed we discussed with the FORDA officials and ministry officials and what are the scenario, and then we looked the literature. One is business as usual. It's not gonna be happen. So it's just a kind of hypothetical, because nobody wants like this, all concession cannot be cleared anymore. But anyway, they have a right anytime the government can, okay, if you have a concession, if they clear, this will be happening. So this scenario and modeling is, if things happen like that, if you read the protection, when I show you the slide about Nepal, that time why the conservation in Park Lilik said why they started planting, because if this scenario continue, this degradation continue in Nepal, in 2020 there will be no tree left, no forest left in Nepal. So that became a big wake-up call for the government, like central government, local government, everyone. Okay, we have no tree left. That's a study coming from a World Bank or something, because they say, okay, if the trend continue like this, it will be happen, but it's not going to happen. So then we change the trend from 29 now gone to 45. So this is different. So we can't tell the people, oh, what you said is wrong, but that's actually positive contribution. So what we are doing here in this scenario is, actually we work on 4 scenarios before. I think it was business as usual, conservation, moratorium, and intensification. And then later we got from the government that this moratorium and conservation are more or less same, and we merged these 2 scenarios to one. So you need to read the rules. So what are the rules under each scenario? So it's very long. So I need to look at the paper here again. So it's not our like advice, is it's based on the number of ecosystem services quantity. What we said is spatial tool, what we did is the sustainable intensification scenario presents like generates the positive impact on carbon. So when you talk about carbon, the sustainable is good. Carbon and water yield. Although the habitat quality is declined, so you will lose some habitat quality when you use sustainable intensification. Okay. In terms of total economic value, when we talk about monetary value, the sustainable scenario offers the compromise solution for the future, production oil palm. So it will be slightly lower than the business as usual, because business as usual is you clear everything and plant oil palm. So that will definitely more profitable in terms of numbers from oil palm. But again, when you talk about the the water and the carbon and biodiversity value, then it will be low. But again, who will pay those services? Then people say, okay, pay me the biodiversity value. So nobody gonna pay you biodiversity value, but we put the number. Okay. And intensification. So that's why we came with the solutions. Okay, the government, you need to maintain your economic growth, maintain your supply of those products. So if we go a strict conservation scenario, and then that will be compromised. So that's why we be using these services. We came with this sustainable intensification is slightly better, and we did a lot of tests, you know, after when we did validation. So we ran the workshop in various locations who provided inputs in West Kalimantan, Central Kalimantan, and also the central level. We presented these numbers and figures, and we got a lot of comments from companies. Oh, this study is very bad. We got from comments from government. That's how we got. So it's worth reading these papers and to see how we came to this conclusion. It's a very long paper we did a few years ago. So yeah. Sorry for not giving you very clear, but that's what I can tell you. So we use this NNPV for each of the scenario. We have the rules, and then we use the value, etc. Thank you.
Yeah, Dr. Himlal. And other things that very important thing is about the global change impacted in environmental surfaces. So do you have any cases how to do research regarding the global change? If we compile, for example, in coastal area, there will be coral bleachings when the global climate change happen, then it will reduce the function of surfaces. So do you have any experience in regarding the research on that kind of topic?
Sorry, Mark, I missed. It was slightly broken, like maybe the connection at the beginning.
Sorry. Yeah. But it is related to the global change. That happens, and I think it will have a very serious impact on the environmental surfaces. Just because the precipitation is also the drought is everywhere. And also in coastal area, there is coral bleaching and others. Do you have any experience in research about the impact of global change into the environmental surfaces?
Myself is I'm following this work by others, but myself I haven't been involved in this kind of global change and associated. But what we have seen in even in Himalaya, you know, that's not even from the research we experience ourselves from experience. Is the forest used to be much lower, like, you know, after 5,000 meters you don't get any forest there. So it's a permanent snow cover, but that now forest is growing like a little bit up. So so if you look at the literature, Canada itself will be very benefit with this global change, because they have a more area to grow forest. The country like southern country, that will be they will lose the area to grow. Like, so it's again what we call trade-off. Some of the area they get a better than others. So in terms of habitat also, if the species are already reached to the edge, they will be extinct with the global change. But the other animals, they may have a little bit more extra space to go a little bit up in the mountain or Himalaya. I think similar situation happened to coral reef also with the change and increasing water temperature. You know, 1 degree temperature increase means so many species will be impacted, which is we don't know. So there are many unknowns. But there are some good works coming. But myself, I haven't got chance to do on this great area.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? We already approaching the times.
Can I have one question, Lilik?
Please,
Mr. Lilik?
I think this is the last questions.
Okay, let's
Please,
this is the last. Yeah, this is also 10 o'clock.
It's the simple one question, I think. Thank you very much, Mr. Lilik and Mr. Himlal. My name is Azwa. I am one of the assistants of Mr. Lilik, actually. So I would like to ask you one question about the sustainable intensification scenario. So my question is there any successful stories on the in the other country who already implement this kind of scenario? I mean, not only in oil palm, or maybe it can be anything in the general, but this country implement the sustainable intensification. So maybe we can, as in Indonesia, we can look up to them. And I mean, every country has their own problem, has their own environmental problem, but at least we can, maybe we can learn.
Yeah, got your question. Yeah, thank you. Very important question. Thank you. That's good. Like, so, if you look at this sustainability literature, sustainable intensification is one of the potential solutions presented in many parts of the world, in many fields, not only palm oil, but also the agriculture, also the forest plantations. For example, in many cases, like a plantation is controversial. People don't want plantations. If you don't have this, the plantation, so what you use, how you use your future demand for timber and other services, because the natural forest is declining, and you need to keep some of the forest for your habitat and protection services. So in this case, the plantation will provide multiple services. And sustainable intensification is you produce more from less land. Some people think, okay, this is not good, but it really depends. Like, do you want to expand more land, like extensive farming in much larger area than intensive farming in a smaller area? And that's also the other thing is what we call like mixed farming, like and that's also you grow trees, and under that as you can see in Vietnam also, they are farming some chickens. They're living somewhere, they're living pigs, like after a couple of years, or they use medicinal plants and aromatic. That's also another example of sustainable intensification. So yeah, basically we have actually demonstrated example in peatland in Sumatra is actually used to be sonar burning. Sonar burning is they burn in the dry season and grow some paddy. But that land we developed, that is a polyculture, like also another sustainable intensification. They can grow their paddy, but planting, not for broadcast, but they also plant some trees and also have some peace. So they have peace, they have some trees, and they have some trees. So that's why some agriculture. So I think sustainable intensification provides a better solutions. But of course, conservation is definitely a good solution. But if you have less land, or if you don't want to expand this in much larger areas, I think sustainable intensification is a solution. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you, Dr. Himlal. I think it's time for the lecture today. It is very, we have a very nice comprehensive lectures, and then also it's very nice offer for research and also partial funding for the students. And also we hear so many experience and so many example of research that can be applied for your research. I think it's 2 hours we talk and it seems like 10 minutes. It's very productive, and there's so many questions. Then I think for you, student, and I think already Dr. Himlal already mentioned in the chat the email address. So for those who are interested to discuss further or to have a collaboration on research, please contact him directly. And I think it's will enhance our perspective on the environmental services. I think thank you very much, Dr. Himlal, for your nice and your time, even though it is a weekend. So you sacrifice your family's time for us. Thank you very much. So
Thank you very much. Yeah.
And so please give a big applause for him for his very valuable time for us. Thank you very much, Dr. Himlal. So I hope that we can meet again in the future. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you very much. And I'll close the meeting and see you and good night. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Syukriya, Dr. Himlal.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Thank you, Pak. Thank you.
Terima kasih.
Thank you.
Terima kasih semuanya, Bapak Ibu sekalian. Terima kasih.
Terima kasih.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Baik, Bapak, Ibu semuanya yang masih bergabung, yang merupakan mahasiswa PSL kelas khusus ya, kita masih ada jadwal praktikum diskusi kelompok seperti yang sudah dijadwalkan sebelumnya. Barangkali kita perlu istirahat sebentar ya untuk Bapak Ibu, silahkan mungkin 10 menit ya. 10 menit untuk istirahat, barangkali mau buat kopi atau lainnya, boleh silahkan. Kita akan kembali lagi bergabung untuk diskusi kelompok di jam 9:12 ya, jadi silahkan istirahat 10 menit dulu.